This is part 2 of the Korean War. Be sure to have watched our previous episode, Why the Korean War Began, before starting this episode. By mid-1950, the stage was set for war between North and South Korea. Both the US and the Soviet Union had removed their forces from the Korean peninsula, and tensions continued to rise between the North and South. On June 25th, North Korean forces poured across the 38th parallel. The Korean People's Army, abbreviated the KPA, was numerically and militarily superior to its South Korean counterpart. The invasion force numbered around 170,000 and was supported by 280 tanks made up of the Soviet T-34-85 and 210 fighters. The Republic of Korea Army, abbreviated the ROK Army, numbered just 98,000 soldiers with no tanks and just 22 aircraft. South Korea had requested tanks from the US, but these were denied. The undertrained and ill-equipped South Korean forces were pushed south and many defected to the north. The United Nations called for the North Korean forces to return to the border, but when no action was taken, they prepared for military involvement. The UN had learned from the mistakes of the League of Nations. Their inaction and policies of appeasement which contributed to the outbreak of the Second World War were not mistakes they were wanted to make. Also, they, and the United States in particular, viewed the coming confrontation as a war against communism itself. Failure to support South Korea would be a victory for communism and its spread. On June 28th, the South Korean capital, Seoul, fell to North Korean forces as they continued to push south. By early July, UN forces, numerically dominated by the US, began arriving in South Korea. The US would be the main contributor to UN forces, making up 88% of all military personnel. They arrived to a difficult situation as the South Korean army had crumbled to only 22,000 men, just over a quarter of its original size. The KPA continued to drive south, reaching the Busan perimeter by August. Desperate fighting took place on this peninsula, and on September 15th, favour was reversed as UN forces, under the command of General Douglas MacArthur, launched an amphibious assault at Incheon, in coordination with a counterattack in the south. By this time, Allied forces outnumbered the North Korean army 180,000 to 100,000, and they were forced into retreat. The arrival of UN forces had not only brought tanks to the south side, but also advanced jet fighters that quickly won air superiority over the propeller aircraft operated by the North. Allied forces moving north recaptured Seoul on September 25th, and by October 30th they had reached the Yalu River, bordering China. In October 1950, as threatened, Chinese forces known as the People's Liberation Army secretly crossed the Yalu River, formally entering the war on side of North Korea. 270,000 soldiers were involved with the initial invasion, which ultimately pushed the UN forces back across the 38th parallel. The Chinese entry to the war also brought the Soviet-made MiG-15 jet fighter, which challenged UN jets and removed Allied air superiority. This was the first time jet fighters confronted each other in combat. It was after these setbacks that Douglas MacArthur openly suggested the use of atomic weapons against China. Because of this, along with other reasons, MacArthur was then removed from command and Truman took over as Commander-in-Chief. This move was unpopular among the American public as they saw MacArthur as a war hero. Fighting continued, and by June 1951, the conflict had turned into a war of attrition around the 38th parallel. In July of 1951, peace talks began, but as no side could come to an agreement, the fighting continued for 2 more years. As both sides continued to commit troops to the conflict, military deaths soared, and with it, civilian deaths too. On July 27, 1953, an armistice was signed between the engaging powers, officially ending the fighting in Korea. Although as no such peace treaty was signed between North and South Korea, the two sides are still technically at war. Next up, we have the Korean War impact, aftermath and statistics. Thanks for watching, and be sure to like and subscribe for more videos like this.